Prepare yourselves, Boma, Idaho, for the 2024 Advocacy Update with Mr. Geoffrey M. Wardle. The esteemed Mr. Wardle is a past regional and local president and currently serves as Vice President of State Government Affairs for Boma International. Geoff is a partner at his law firm, Clark Wardle, specializing in real estate, commercial development, zoning, planning, and land use, commercial litigation, and transportation. Please welcome to the stage, Mr. Geoffrey M. Wardle.
All right. Well, I am Geoff Wardle. I am a longtime Boma, Idaho member. And, I think I've been here for every one of Steve's quizzes over the years. So thank you, Steve. I was asked in my capacity as a member of Boma International's Executive Committee to provide you with an advocacy update. Now, I know you hear from me a lot more than I really think you need to, but you keep asking me back. So we're going to talk about Boma's International's advocacy agenda for this year, and then I'm going to talk about why capital is not your friend. So let's get ready. All right, the first bill that we are working this session in Congress is H.R. 1491, which will extend and amend the SBA 504 loan program, which provides for energy efficiency upgrades. Historically, the threshold has been $5 million, and what most owners have found is that just isn't sufficient for the type of HVAC and lighting and electrical upgrades that are contemplated. So we're asking for that to be increased to $10 million in anticipation of addressing the need to upgrade so many of our systems and facilities as we deal with aging stock and electrification. The next bill that we have worked on this session is H.R. 2621, honoring vocational education. And the purpose of this is to have the Census Bureau actually track data relating to the trades and non-college post-secondary training. If you can't measure it, you can't advocate for it. And what we have found is that in America, there is a huge gap in how we are evaluating not just what we're doing in the arena of workforce development, but what skills and trades are out there. And this is an attempt to try to identify and get that data. The next measure, also related to workforce development, is H.R. 1477, which will amend the 529 educational savings account programs to enable mid-career workers to take better advantage of the services and the benefits that come from 529s. It will expand the definition of eligible academic institutions and permit its utilization for mid-career credentialing and post-secondary training. Certainly, we need to look at workforce development in a much more holistic view. We talk a lot about workforce development, but we have not advocated in this country for policies that actually help our workers get the skills we say they need. Now, Boma International is also committed to policy. We recognize that much of America and many jurisdictions are pushing for decarbonization or electrification. We took the initiative last year with a consultant to develop a study analyzing the status of commercial real estate in the electrification arena. And what did we find? Well, first of all, there is a clear mismatch between available technology and the policies that are being adopted. Second, we're going to have to invest in our grids, and Texas is doomed, by the way. Third, we have to change the way that we lease properties because we have to have a better partnership between tenants and landlords in the utilization of electricity to better balance and better monitor these issues. And finally, we have to train our workers to be able to function and develop the skills that they need to work in an electrified universe. Now, in promotion of this, we have had a series of policy symposiums, and our next one will be this March in Washington, D.C., as we talk about implementation of decarbonization strategies, microgrids, and alternative means of production. But let's talk about the means of production, because like I said, I think we're all going to find over the next couple of years that capital is not our friend. Labor is what is going to save us as we get through the next economic cycle, because labor is the new capital. Now, last year, if you were here, you heard me talk about the importance of housing. And I was pretty direct as to some of the jurisdictions in this valley as to what they needed to do about housing. People didn't listen. So like I learned from my mother, we're going to repeat that. As Jenny Schutz in her book, Fixer Upper, noted, workforce development requires a commitment to housing your workforce in the communities that you want them to work in. If our workers don't have housing choice, then we restrict the labor supply, we put an unnecessary burden on our lower wage workers, and we entrench economic segregation. Now, I think I wasn't explicit enough last year on what we need to do. So, let's pretend we're all at planning and zoning tonight. We've got a 6-item agenda, and I want you to ask yourself, am I the NIMBY? First item on our agenda tonight, your neighbor wants to live in their commercial building so that their kids can attend the school that's right next door. Do you object? Well, if you do, you would make it so that the Olsen kids have to commute in from the suburbs just like the Ingalls. Jet Setter in our community already has an on-site, non-family member employee caretaker, but he wants a second one who may or may not be employed and is a vet. Do you object? Well, if you do, where's Magnum going to live? Third item on our agenda. Local hospital wants to allow its employees to live in RVs in their parking lot because of the high cost of housing in a high-growth, expensive market. Do you object? Well, if you do, you're going to render Gonzo homeless, and Trapper John is going to have no place to drink after hard days in surgery. Let's turn to our next item. Roadside Bar and Grill wants to put a mobile home in its parking lot to house an ex-con. Now, it is tough to afford a place in Malibu on $200 a day plus expenses, but this hardworking PI does. Or are you going to put Jim Rockford out on the street more than he already is when he's at Paradise Cove? Multifamily application is our 5th application tonight, and they want to have basement apartments. A, why do you care? And B, do you object? Well, if you object, you're going to deprive us all of the after-work antics of Milwaukee's hardest working brewers, Laverne and Shirley, because they live in a neighborhood where they can walk to work and sing their song as they retreat every night to their basement apartment before they decamp to Southern California in season 4. Now, your neighbor wants to convert the space above their garage to an apartment to house a motorcycle mechanic. Do you object? Well, if you do, you render Grandma Nussbaum homeless, because if you remember season 3 of Happy Days, Grandma Nussbaum was the one that was going to move into the Cunningham's ADU. She didn't like the stairs, so her doting grandson Fonzie offered to take the upstairs apartment and allow Grandma Nussbaum to move into his place. Fonzie was the coolest renter ever, and that's when he became a regular part of the Cunningham household. Now, don't even get me started on the mixed-use utopias that we were promised by Sesame Street and Richard Scarry's Busy Town. You can't do that in most jurisdictions, not only in America, let alone in Idaho. So when we talk about alternative housing types, the reality is Detached, large lot, single-family residences are the easiest things on earth to build. And that's what we've made our default. But the reality is there are lots of different housing types that we need. And why do we need them? Who is looking for these alternative types of housing? Well, it's your divorced brother who wants to live close to his kids. It's your son who's got a good job but hasn't saved enough money yet to buy his first home. And my son is here, and he's exactly in that spot. Your widowed mother. My mother is not dead, nor is my father, but your widowed mother who just can't handle the yard anymore and needs an easier place. Your sister who needs a temporary place for her and her family while she's building a home. And your colleague who just doesn't want to be tied down. They don't have to be Rockford. They don't have to be Magnum. They don't have to be Gonzo. They're our friends, our neighbors, our family members. So housing needs to be a continuum. Just like you see in Busytown, there's different kinds of housing for everybody, and we need to have it. From emergency shelter to transitional housing, co-housing, apartments, ADUs, carriage houses, cottages. But what are the obstacles? Why are we not investing in this critical area for our workers? We have to make it easier. Lot sizes need to be smaller. Size of buildings in the residential arena need to be reduced. Parking minimums, both in the commercial and residential setting, need to be reduced, if not eliminated. Let the market decide how much parking to provide. And finally, we have to simplify the approval process for ADUs and multiplexes. So, housing is important. But let's talk about the second thing we need to invest in as we deal with the fact that labor will save you, and that is relationships, okay? Now, bankers, close your ears, everybody else, they're not your friends. Those of you who are tenants, landlords and bankers get together and do stuff that never benefits you. Your tenants are not staying in your place, in your premises, because you got a screaming refi that lowered your rate, that enabled you to cash out some equity and go to non-recourse terms. Why? Well, you didn't give your tenants a dividend. You didn't rebate rents. And I guarantee that KeyBank did not take your tenants to Chandler's and have dinner celebrating the refi. What do we need to do? It's about investing in these relationships and recognizing the importance of labor in property management and tenant relationships. Tenants stay and renew leases because of relationships, because of labor. They stay because your assistant property manager is responsive and timely. They stay because your building engineer works to solve that annoying squeak. They stay because your location is someplace that's good for their employees. They don't stay because of your economic terms. So, do we thank the important people? Do you thank the GM of your tenant who you've had to hound for a third different estoppel because some attorney in Chicago didn't like how it was written the first two times? Did you thank your property manager who you made go dog that tenant? Did you thank your building users who acted responsibly and reduced their electrical consumption? Did you thank your building engineer who pulled an all-nighter to get your chiller back online after a thunderstorm wipes everything out and renders the humidity off the charts? You should. Because as Peggy tells us, you never say thank you. And with our employees and with our tenants, that's what the money's for. No longer works as a management strategy. We can't just offer our tenants and our employees cupcakes, ice cream bars, or donuts twice a year and think that that is the investment in the relationships that we need to keep our properties stable, full, and functioning. So, the last thing, as we invest in labor and recognizing that capital is not going to save us, we have to be consistent in the policies we advocate for. Now, here is something I've only told a few people. The years that BOMA International has advocated for the hedge fund bros and maintaining carried interest on Capitol Hill, I have refused to go because hedge fund bros can take care of their own carried interest. I don't need to carry that water. We need to be consistent in the policies that we talk about. If we're talking about our industry and we're talking about our workers, the reality is we need to promote policies that are pro-worker, that are pro-family. And we need to be consistent with the requirements we seek to stick upon workers as we do on capital. If you want an expansion of investment tax credits, Representative Fulcher, then you need to also not object to expansion of the child tax credit. It's fundamental. Both are investment. Both are investment in important things. But we need to treat capital the way we treat labor. We need to make sure that if you're eligible and qualify for SNAP and Medicare, that it's just as easy for you to qualify and maintain that status and get those benefits as it is for you to deduct your long-term expenses, to claim your long-term capital gains income, to qualify your carried interest. We shouldn't be imposing work requirements on those programs if we're not willing to impose similar limitations on the capital class. And if you oppose defunding the police, House GOP caucus, don't defund the IRS. It's kind of unseemly. So, we need to invest in labor in our industry. We need to quit talking about workforce development, and we actually need to promote policies that benefit our workers. We need to promote housing, make housing more accessible, make housing easier, make housing plentiful. We need to improve the relationships and recognize that capital isn't going to save us. It's our employees. It's the employees of our tenants who are coming to work in our buildings that get us paid. And then we need to be consistent. We need to reevaluate as an industry our willingness to subject others to policies that we never will. So I don't know if you'll have me back again next year, but if we do, I will probably talk about housing. So thank you. I appreciate it.